good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to be here. We're going to be talking about the trends in CPG, and I'm excited to present this panel. So I'm going to start with Chris. I'll allow you to introduce yourself, and Micah, please continue.
I'm Chris Walker, Chief Commercial Officer and co-founder of Hoodie Analytics. We bring the first CPG data and analytics platform to the cannabis industry. So excited to be here.
My name is Micah Anderson. I'm the CEO of a company called Leaf Brands. We are a scaled manufacturing supply chain company based out of California.
Hi, my name is Christine Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Grew and Edibles. We're an edibles company that started in Portland, Oregon back in 2015, and now we're across 7 states in Canada.
Excellent. All right. Well, I wanted to take advantage to discuss 3 main topics in this area. So one is the importance of market research when you're creating new products. So I wanted to start first with you, Chris, around how important is to look into the data and analytics to develop new products, particularly to go into new consumer markets.
So I obviously am a data guy, Carlos. So data is making data-driven decisions is ultimately what my passion is. From the start, if you are a brand, the world is made up of customers who are many different shapes and sizes, and are looking for different needs, and they've got different use cases. And ultimately, where you're going to be able to differentiate and make profits and money and create brand equity is if you can truly have an opportunity where your brand is differentiated because it meets a specific need for a customer who's willing to pay you more than the commoditized price. And so getting that research to figure out what that is critical. Great.
Christine, I'm curious to hear from you.
Yeah, I agree. The data is critically important, and we rely on the data heavily to drive us as we enter new markets. So we're always looking at a few things. We're looking at new markets and we're looking at new products. And some of those run in parallel and some of them are independent. As a market is launching into adult use, there's a lot, sometimes there's limited data that we're looking at. As the markets mature, we're really starting to understand where that goes, but not just analyzing it for new markets, but understanding what's happening in our more mature markets, because that is actually driving how we are operating in our new markets, if that makes sense. A lot of new old, but it's a lot of data and it's a lot of analyzing it, and it's across all the different platforms. And there's what's really great too is that we're seeing retailers, new data being able to come back. So, the live data, the rapid fire data, that as well as being able to get data specific from stores, so we're able to see what SKUs are moving and then actually start to stock them as traditional brands and more traditional retail.
Got it. Micah, I want to get to you. I know you guys have an actual retail store where you test new products and then you provide those insights to brands. Tell us more about that and how you track the data behind this.
Yeah, so our business model is a little different. So at our core, we're an extraction company, and our focus is on powering many of the largest brands in California. We do have one store within the company, and the store is really utilized to collect data to then we launch products within the store, collect data from about 50 different consumers that are regulars, give them a QR code, a way for us to receive data back from them, and then we'll pass those trends on, or if we find something that we feel is working. So for instance, THCV is a new one in California that we spent the last 12 months. So we'll go through the extraction process, make sure that we get the formulation down. We'll launch products ourselves under our own kind of white labeled product within the store. With the sole point of doing that is to pass it off to the larger brands that we work with so that they can run point with it or run sales on it, since they have larger distribution platform throughout the state than we do.
Great. Chris, one more question to you on that. In terms of expanding to new consumer demographics, what kind of data do you provide to the brands, and how do you go about walking them to how to penetrate specific consumer segments?
It's a big question. The short answer is we live and breathe in the stores first and foremost, right? A store is a collection of customers. Stores in one location in a city are going to have very different types of customers than the same store may have in a different part of the city. And so one of the things that's unique about the way that we approach that is we can then look at clustering any store based off of similar consumer patterns, right? So I've got all the affluent customers, affluent and old in this dispensary, and I've got younger and less affluent in this other dispensary. But what you see is major differences in how the same product will perform in each of those dispensaries because of the consumers, right? And it's not just about price. It's you have different people looking for different products to meet their specific needs, and understanding that is where you're going to make money. And that's one of the things that we're fortunate to be able to provide through Hoodie.
Christine, as you kind of launch new products, tell us something exciting that you've taken a huge risk about launching a new product, maybe to conquer a new consumer demographic. Tell us the story behind that and what you learned from that.
Well, we're constantly looking at product innovation, and the most recent product that we came out with is our Tangelo. It's a CPG, so we've leaned really heavily into the minor cannabinoids. Again, we are specifically an edible company, so our model to do one thing and do it really well instead of trying to do it across all the board. And I think there's lots of different models, but the Tangelo, we spent about 6 months figuring out what the ratio of that product was, and then doing a lot of studies internally on how that would look, looking at the data, looking at how that product has performed across different markets, and then bringing out in a flavor profile that people are looking at. So we're also looking at the data of what's really hot. Orange is a really hot flavor right now, right? So we're looking at that. We're looking at the cannabinoid profile. We're looking at what markets we think it's going to do really well in. So consuming all that data then goes into it, and it's been really successful. Within the first 30 days, it took 12% of our revenue across the gummy, so across our gummy SKU. So it's that's very, very good return on an investment with innovation.
No, that's great. Micah, last question for you on this topic. In terms of new products, as you advise brands and you scale production for them, what is the number one failure that you've seen as they launch a new product? What do you think is the key takeaway of something that has not gone well as you launch a new product?
Focus on quality. So you mentioned that you spent 6 months. We feel like that's about the cycle of time that we see when companies do launch a new product correctly. It takes time to get it correctly, and then making sure that your formulations, it depends on what type of product it is and what type of apparatus you're launching it with. Hardware failures is a big one in California. And then I think the other one that we see a lot of times is that people don't really think through the supply chain side of it first. And so they launch a product not really realizing that they don't really have, the supply chain isn't behind the product. So if it does gain traction, they quickly sell through that product, they run out. It's the best way to ruin your relationship with retailers and then lose consumers at the same time.
Really good. Thank you. Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about the distribution strategies for all the products that you produce. And let's start with Chris, and I want to take it from the data side of things, right? And my question is, does the packaging of the individual products change based on the market that you're going into? What kind of insights can you get from data and testing those models?
That's a good question, Carlos. I mean, listen. The short answer is packaging is a holistic part of the overall brand essence of any given product, right? So what is a brand? A brand is, will I pay a premium for it? Will I drive a bit further to get it? Is it my favorite? Those are the essence of brand equity, right? Those are what that's what you're hopefully investing money in because you want to build a brand. And so packaging obviously is important to it because that is, it creates these mental experiences for you based off of what you believe that package is going to deliver. And ultimately, it can make the difference of a customer viewing your product as premium or not premium. And ultimately, if you have the ability to gain synergies through having some similarities in the packaging across states, then that's something you should certainly look at. But ultimately, packaging is a key part of your brand essence. You got to get it right. And folks like Christine know that extremely well because they're really good at it.
That's the next topic. Christine, yeah, tell us more about
I'm over
that.
here laughing because it's the bane of my existence. I think we have 32, don't quote me on it, I think we've got 32 SKUs, but every single state is completely different. So there's over 200 SKUs that we're managing for the same products. So every state is slightly different. And we have an entire supply chain team that is working on it. We've invested really heavily internally in our brand and marketing team and creating systems. So we're able to manage all of this. When we make a change, it holistically goes across when we can. But it's a real complexity, and it's the same thing. I say supply chain and distribution chain are two aspects once you start looking at expanding a brand outside of a single state that become really critical to your success and are often not, everybody's looking at manufacturing and sales and not supply chain, the logistical side of supply chain and distribution. And those are just really key components to consider.
Super important.
Carlos, if I could add one thing, just as Christine was saying, there's 200 SKUs she's managing, but every one of those SKUs has been probably put into an e-commerce system by a bud tender 9,000 different ways.
That's
in
correct.
9,000 different images, right? And so as much time as Christine spent investing and getting that packaging right, the customer experience is so different based off of the fact that there's no synergies in how all that data is coming together. So if anyone wants to talk about that, come see me afterwards, because we really think there's an opportunity for some strong industry standards, and it's a big passion area for us. So,
Micah, when your team produces a specific product for one of your customers, and you see that you're producing two similar products, how much is the discussion? What part of the whole process goes into the packaging on your business?
Yeah, I mean, our success is we really rely on our brand partners to be successful as well. So we try and stay as involved in the process as possible, updating them on packaging regulation changes that might be coming. That's another one. If I was to answer the question again, is like I see a lot of slowdown in sales cycles because of that, changes that people didn't foresee or they got it wrong. So we try and stay involved with that. When it comes to like colors and sizing and whatnot, we share some of the data from the store just to show that like, hey, this box would be better served if it was smaller because it's going to take up a smaller footprint on the shelf at the retail. But I think our value add is really staying more involved on like the formulation and supply chain side of it, and just giving a little bit of nudge here and there on like, you guys should really think about this when it comes to packaging, and because if they make a mistake and they're slowed down or they don't have the right packaging, ultimately it impacts our business as well.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about also the incentives that you now provide to retailers, right? So you want retailers to carry your product. How is that changing? I know last year for all of us in cannabis was a tough year, right? So it was more about, race to the bottom around pricing. What is changing? What do you see that changing this year, Christine?
Maturity in the market. I think we're seeing retailers too that are looking for a different level of investment from their brands. They're looking for marketing support, real support, and it's a more sophisticated level of support that you see outside of the industry, or we have seen outside of the industry. So it's not just BOGOs or give us cheaper pricing, it's how can you help drive customers into our doors. So we're looking at brands to really be the activation piece, and that's what they do in the real world. You look at Red Bull or you look at some of these other great brands and what they're doing and driving, and they actually are driving people to events and to retailers, and people want to be part of that. It's just brands take a long time to mature, and I still don't think there's true brand continuity within this industry right now. We're getting there, but it's still just really, really young. So yeah, but I think that's really what we're seeing, and we're starting to see as the market matures a more traditional relationship between brand and retailers, and it's nice.
No, interesting. Chris, I know that you see a lot of the movement of products with retailers and brands, and you provide lots of insights to them. In terms of merchandising strategies and incentives, what do you think is changing or working today?
I, I think it would be incorrect to say that it's working today. This panel is all around how do we emerge and become more CPG oriented, and I think that Christine just said it. I think the industry is maturing, right? So what a retailer should be demanding specific things of their brand partners. Even if you're a small mom and pop. If you want to have your product on my shelf, it's valuable real estate, you need to be coming in prepared. And the sophisticated retailers know that if a product doesn't hit certain thresholds and certain hurdle rates in the first 30 days, in the first 90 days, in the first 180 days, that in order for them to stay on the shelf, they have to provide incentives, right? And historically, that was all through cash. Promote. And to Christine's point, now, I think we're starting to see that incentive to help my brand perform and help my store perform be more cohesive. So maybe it's bud tender education. Maybe it's maybe it is promotion. Maybe it's sampling, right? And so there are different ways that you can support a brand, but the key piece is the dispensary and the brand should both be very transparent in understanding how this product should be performing, and if it's not hitting a certain threshold, to already have a plan of what we're going to do to solve for that problem, and please don't make it all around promotion. Like that's we've got to get out of that vicious cycle.
Okay, anything you'd like to add?
I think the one thing I would add, just from our experience with the one store that we have and speaking with a lot of our clients, I think that's very, very important for a brand, a CPG brand, to take into consideration, is that you cannot run out of product. Like, you really have to have your supply chain dialed in, because one of the things I think there was, and I'm California focused, so I'm talking about California, but over the past 2 years we absolutely saw a race to the bottom on pricing, and I think that from the retail side there was a lot of short-sighted predatory purchasing and decision making going on that long-term didn't work out necessarily for the retailers as well. And so if you're a CPG brand, what's important for us as a single store operator is that you can't run out of product. It's less about, and I advise our store manager, and she does a very good job of running point on this, is I'm okay giving up a bit of pricing. I'll pay more for the product as long as they're a solid partner, they're showing up, to your point, and participating, driving traffic to this store to where it truly is a collaborative effort. But as soon as you start working with brands that are like dealing with seasonality issues or running out of supply chain, it's just then it's a death blow.
Christine, one important item that I know we all agree is training bartenders about your product. What are the key differences? What is the secret sauce of that product? Tell me how you go about it as you launch a new product, into just making sure that anyone selling your product understands why a consumer should buy it.
I throw them parties.
Simple.
I mean, it sounds simple, but I was just in New York last night. I just got in here today from a fantastic party that we threw. And I say it's a party, but it's an education event. It's an appreciation event. These are the frontline folks that are doing. They are the ones that are interacting, and they're selling our products, and they are often feel as a whole unappreciated, right? And they don't want to be talked to. They actually want to be heard a lot. And so what we found is bringing, we call them bud tender balls, and we do them, in all our markets, and sometimes we partner with our dear, folks like Timeless and other things to bring some brands together that should have some continuity in this, and bring events together so folks are able to learn. Yep. But it's an interactive learning. So we still do in-store trainings and different pieces, but we found this to be it's a really successful way of engaging bud tenders in a more informal way that they are really responding to.
Excellent. Okay, I want us to talk about branding and your digital marketing strategies, right? It's super, super important. And I think one of the biggest pieces is to understand, is that investment paying off, right? So let's start with closing 2023, moving into 2024. How important is your branding strategy for 2024, and how much investment are you putting behind that? Let's start with you, Christine.
So we are We have increased our budget this year for marketing and branding. I want to say we've tripled it from last year. Okay. Don't quote me on that. But the digital side of our branding aspect is really important. And digital goes across everything. So there's digital banners in the retail stores. There's there's the different pieces that we're doing when people are coming into the stores, the I Heart Jane, the different pieces there. Mm-hmm. There's all the social media. There's also the video aspects that we're doing, but a lot of it is just the digital screens that are happening. Everything is getting more and more digital. But it's critically important, and I can't stress enough how long it takes to mature a brand. People use this term brand, and I think everybody pulls a brand and just puts it all in a bucket. And it's easy to throw packaging on something and create a brand. I say this, it's really easy to make a brand. It's really hard to mature a brand and to grow it into something that can stand on its own and isn't just being constantly fed, and that someone knows what it stands for, what the ethos is of that brand. And so I think it's leaning in and targeting your marketing and your digital assets to reflect what the ethos is, so that there is some longevity in what you're making. But
excellent. Anything you'd like to add, Chris?
Measure. You got to measure, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, and Christine's right. You guys, we should all be investing behind brands right now, and so I would certainly encourage those who can. Like, now's the time to cut through. But at the end of the day, every dollar matters, right? And you should know if you put $1,000 or $100,000 or $1 million into a specific program, you should be able to measure the uplift. And the reality of it is there's so much data out there. If you're working with multiple agencies, you're going to have 3 agencies taking credit for the exact same sale that happened one time. And so, making sure you're not only measuring it, but you're measuring it in an objective way to ensure that you've got ROI for every dollar that's being spent. And listen, it sounds hard, but the reality is that the data's there to do it now. So I would definitely make sure that you're taking a little bit of that marketing budget and ensuring that you've got a good way of tracking it, so you know where to spend and where not to spend next time around.
Okay, so let's think about this. So out of a marketing budget, you have, investment on platforms, social media, where we can, and actual in-store, right? The biggest question is attribution, and what is the ROI on that investment, right? That is the biggest discussion on anybody in marketing. So what is currently where you're seeing the biggest ROI on your marketing investment? What channel, what is really giving you the most traction? Start with you, Christine.
boy, you put me on the spot here. What is the biggest, here's the hard thing, is that I still think we're not, and this is a goal for us this year, as and it's a goal every year, but we're getting better at it, is actually understanding what the ROI is. So it's really having access to companies like Hoodie that are able to give us that data so that we can track it. Because often we'll see, well, this is working, but we don't know exactly what is working. We just know that holistically all the pieces are working. And so it's hard for me to say it's just one component. What we see is that it's a combination of a lot of things, right? So we have to do these digital pieces, we have to go in and do activations, we've got to be able to have folks in stores. All of these are different marketing pieces of it. The other piece that isn't just our aspect, but I find that with our brand team, which is internal, we're often doing the heavy lift for some of the retailers too, with their marketing. And there's an ROI on that too. So I don't have a clear answer for you, but I ask me next year.
No, but I agree. I mean, it's the cohesiveness of all those efforts that will give you something in return. I'll pass it over to you, Micah. So you support a lot of brands on your business. Is there any specific trends in terms of how they're investing their digital dollars for marketing that you're seeing?
Less on the digital side. I personally think that the best way, if you're a CPG brand and you're trying to make an impact, I think that the best money you can spend is on doing what you're saying. You got to win over the bud tenders within the store. They're an extension of your sales force at the end of the day. Yep. And there's different strategies and ways to go about doing that. Yes, parties is a very good way to do that. But if you can figure out a way to get in there and buy, like, truly get real buy-in within the bud tenders at the various locations that you're at, that's the best return that you're going to get. That's my opinion.
No, that's perfect. All right, we got 4 minutes left, and I wanted to ask each of you, let's put ourselves into the future, 12 months into the future, 2025. What are the biggest things that you think will happen on the CPG side in things in cannabis in 12 months' time? What are we going to be talking about next year? I'll start with you, Christine, right on the spot.
In 12 months' time, what do I want to happen, or what do I think is going to happen?
What do we think?
I think we're going to see continued maturity. I mean, the interesting thing is that we still have new markets coming on board, and every market goes through its own cycle. And as markets now move into adult use, that growth cycle happens faster than it did 10 years ago. But there's still this level of maturity that happens. I think we are going to see consolidation. So we're going to see less brands, but more sophistication with the brands that are on the shelves. Hopefully we see some movement from the feds with maybe something we'll see that can allow some crossover, but I don't expect that in 12 months.
Yeah, we've been burned before. Micah, anything you'd like to add?
I personally don't think we're going to see much from in way of like rescheduling of the feds. So I think we're, at least from our perspective, we're not necessarily like holding our breath on it. I think that's going to be some time. So maybe to answer it I'll answer it like what I want to have happen, and like some of the wild card things that I think that are going on right now is that, in a perfect world, rescheduling would happen. So that way it becomes a lot easier. You're in multiple states. A lot of the brands that we work with are in multiple states. It's highly problematic to have to plan ahead for all of those, from supply chain to distribution and all the rest. So my hope is that that gets cleaned up in the near future. And then I think the other wild one that's happening right now is just the hemp market competing with the cannabis market in a lot of these different markets in a way that no one really foresaw. And how that all shakes out, I don't really know. I think in a perfect world, I guess my hope would be that we find some way to sort of consolidate the two. I've grown both, I've extracted both. It's the same plant at the end of the day, and
Yes.
yeah.
It's a hot topic, that's for sure.
I think that in California, this is one thing I saw early on, right? Is like the state took the industry, they dissected it into a bunch of different license types, and they put everyone kind of at odds with each other. And all of a sudden, people that used to be collaborating with each other were now pointing fingers and mad at the distribution guys were mad at the manufacturers, the retailers were mad at these guys, and that still exists today. And then now you've got this bigger thing taking place with the hemp side of it, and it's causing even more chaos. So I hope that we figure that out.
I agree. What about you, Chris?
I think the big thing that I'm starting to see a lot of, so I do think this will happen, is people and organizations starting to prioritize repeatable processes and data-driven decisions rather than relying on institutional knowledge and gut feel, right? And I really think we're now at a point where the data exists in cannabis to really have a true CPG brand and a CPG retailer. And having, I had a very successful distributor in California. I used this word category management with them, which was a scary. This category management is very common in CPG, and I was like, well, I think we're there. We can do this category management thing. And he was like, well, I've got 25 salespeople, so and none of them know how to use data. So what am I going to do? And my feedback to him is, well, I think you need to take a couple of those salespeople, and we're going to replace them with centralized category managers and insights-driven people that will then support the other 23 salespeople that are still there. And guess what? Rather than all 25 of those people trying to do 100 things and only being good at a couple of them, you now have 2 people at the center that know this space really well that are enabling all of the rest of the 23 people to be monumentally more successful and to be making data-driven decisions. And I don't need to guess that that's the future. That is how other industries are working today, and I do think cannabis is starting to move in that direction.
Great. I think I'm going to try to squeeze one more question if I could. I think we got a little bit more time. In terms of consumer demographics and trends, at Leafly, we're seeing that has been a significant shift into, before it was more of a younger demographic, and now we're seeing even 55 and over to becoming a much larger demographic. And what we're learning is that they're a lot more into education and hand-holding, but they have a bigger share of wallet. I wanted to hear from each of you about what you're doing to address that new consumer trends and whether or not you agree with our views on the data.
It's a great question. I'm just gonna answer it. Sorry, you didn't even call my name.
Go ahead.
I totally agree with you, and we see that a lot. So and I like to call them existing and new consumers, right? So we have new consumers. I am a perfect demographic for that. I am that person. I'm 50 years old. I have been using cannabis since I was 39 years old. It wasn't before that. It wasn't part of my life before that, and it is now a part of my daily life and a wellness level, right? So we are looking at new products. For example, we have a new sleep ratio product that's coming out next month that's at 10-to-1. So it's a 2.5 milligrams of THC and a gummy with 25 milligrams of CBN. It is a mega sleep gummy, and it is fantastic. It's my favorite product we've ever made. I'm very excited to see the data on this because I think the product is just fantastic. But one of the concerns I have is that education piece, right? Yes. And one of the struggles that we have is often our bud tenders are heavy users, and so they lean into selling people things that they would like versus products that are, lower THC. And so it's going to be a heavy lift on the education side, and that's something that we have to look at. But that is, from a brand, that's something that we're constantly looking at as innovation and seeing the trends of the consumers that are coming into the market. And I do think there more and more we're seeing these newer consumers, a little bit older basis, some young too, but yeah. It's just a different cannabis consumer that hasn't been using whatever their age is. They're just new to cannabis.
Excellent. Micah?
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of the things we're definitely seeing in our store is just we have a lot of older people. Now our store, to full disclosure, we're in an older demographic area, so we got a lot of baby boomers that live in the area. But these people, typically have money to spend, and they come in and they want the less potency in their products, and we sold like $1.2 million in gummies alone last year. And like between different types of minors, sleep formulations, and like other kind of like rare formulations that aren't necessarily what the younger demographic want. I think that's an awesome thing, especially the industry as a whole. We need more and more consumers to come into it. And someone was sharing me yesterday just some of the analytics that came out recently on alcohol sales in Colorado, and how, this is one of the wild things I was saying a minute ago, is that, the hemp beverage side is now, taking away from market share from the alcohol side, which I personally think is a good thing too. And it's lower dosed products. And so I think that it's a great thing, and it's a great way to get more people into the industry.
Very good point.
With 30 seconds left, Carlos, I will just say the other exciting thing about these new consumers coming in is they have not been addicted to the promotion drug for the entirety of their cannabis experience. So at the end of the day, thanks, Draper. At the end of the day, like the lifetime value of those new customers coming in, it could be so much greater than what we've had to date, because these folks are willing to pay a premium for a great product and great brand and lifestyle brands, right? That's the opportunity that we have as an industry right now. So let's get off the promotion crack as soon as we can.
Great point. Thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to close with the idea of education, creating content for individual customer segments is super important, especially for our industry. So leverage the education portion as you go through the CPG journey. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank-